Case, and we're about an hour away from Sanford's city manager holding a news conference. He's expected to give an update on the investigation into the teenager's death. Meanwhile, many, including the NAACP, are calling for a federal takeover of the Sanford Police Department. Now, joining me live from San Francisco is attorney John Burris. John specializes in police discrimination and abuse cases and actually helped win federal court monitoring of the Oakland, California Police Department and that legendary case of the riders in that police department. John, first of all, let me get your reaction to at least how things are playing out. You've got the city manager coming on Andrea Mitchell's show a little bit more than an hour ago saying that he had a lot to look at. He has the power to fire or ask Bell, the police chief in Sanford, to resign. We don't know what he's going to say, but what is your gut telling you here?
Well, my gut tells me that a poor investigation took place at the outset. He is responsible for that and therefore gave sort of cover to Mr. Zimmerman. And as a consequence of that, I don't know that you can trust the police department. You know, having been involved in these cases, it is important that someone else take a look at this, whether it's an outside agency or a state agency or feds. Now, from my way of thinking, that this looks like a case that should have federal prosecution associated with it. And that means that there's a race component to the actual shooting by the racial slurs that was used and the other statements that were made and the racial profiling, walking while black, etc. So in that sense, it is a case that the feds could easily take over. In terms of the department, the police department, the feds would need to know that there's other conduct that is taking place. There's a pattern and practice that exists in terms of discriminatory law enforcement with that agency. If they do that, right, then they in fact could, because having been involved in a case like that, I understand that you can take it over, but you must have a pattern in practice. This may or may not be an isolated incident, but it can be for the feds to prosecute this individual because of the racial components of it.
But John, in this situation, the Miami Herald is reporting that the police chief was brought in 10 months ago because of discrimination or alleged discrimination and racial problems within that department. So and we saw that town hall meeting where so many people turned up citing instances where they believe there were cases of discrimination and issues with that police department. Would that be enough to forward a larger intervention here?
I'd say certainly that the feds could, or a private law firm can, such as what we did, because if there's a pattern in practice. Now, in this particular case, what you have is not directly the police involved in the actual killing of this person. What you have is their failure to conduct a proper investigation, and the argument is that because the individual was black and that there's a history in the department of not investigating and not taking care of a discriminatory form of law enforcement. So you could, in fact, do that. It would be a challenge for the department. But if there's sufficient facts on other cases where you can demonstrate that the department really has not investigated cases involving black victims on the same level that they have white victims, right, then the feds would have something to talk about.
All right, John, thank you very much. I know we'll be talking with you more. We'll see what the city manager says and what happens next. Thank you, John. Well, Trayvon Martin's story is bringing to light the scary reality for many black families in this country. Mothers, fathers worried about their sons being targeted say they're forced to give their kids rules to live by in order to keep them alive. NBC's Mara Scalvo-Campo talked with one family.
It makes me angry. And it makes me very frightened.
My mom always told me to just go with what the cop says, never argue with him. Every time I'm out at a public event or a cop sees me down the street or a security officer sees me down the street, he asks me, "Where are you supposed to be, boy?"
Joining me live from Cambridge, Massachusetts is Torrey, MSNBC contributor. Torrey, I know you know this story. You heard the young man say it. I have a brother who has also experienced this same kind of thing in Texas. John Burris mentioned walking while black. We know it as also driving while black. The larger conversation here, is this a surprise to anyone that this is happening, or that young black men and their families feel this way?
The tragic part of the story is that, no, it's not a surprise. We can name many national incidents that echo this one. We can name many incidents that we know in our personal lives and our families that echo this one. So many families in America have that birds and the bees talk about sex with their kids. Black families in America have another talk with their black boys as they come into young manhood, telling them, hey, there are little things that you have to do that could save your life. And we're not here saying that Trayvon Trayvon in particular did anything wrong, or that Oscar Grant did anything wrong, or any of these other people we could name did anything wrong. But we have to arm our children with that little bit of extra knowledge that somebody might look at you and put their anxieties and insecurities on top of you. And I'm referencing a James Baldwin quote from decades ago, but we're still dealing with that. The anxieties and insecurities that other people will put on us. We hear in the 911 tape the way that George Zimmerman applied all these ideas, all these prejudices and stereotypes onto Trayvon Martin, just seeing a black boy walking in the distance, right, talking on the phone, and he's up to no good, he's on drugs, all these other things. We have to tell our boys that there's things you need to be aware of. You need to be aware that people are looking at you like that, and you need to be aware that there are things you might be able to do that could save your life.
You know, it's interesting you bring that up, Torrey, just even the perception level. We've talked a lot about, for example, the boys with the baggy pants, and, you know, you've got these different cities who want to end this. And I actually told a friend, Justin Bieber had his saggy pants on during a concert. That is processed so differently than a boy from a black background of the same age. He may not have millions of dollars in record sales, but they still have this same look. And just based on the clothing choice, it is processed, as we know, in so many cases, so much more harshly with black boys.
But the clothes are a red herring. You're referring to that, you know, we blame it on the hoodie, they blame it on the baggy jeans or what have you, you know, the Air Jordans or what have you, but that's not what they're really seeing. They're seeing the skin. I mean, you know the old joke, what's a black man in a suit, right? I mean, a black man with a PhD, what's a black man who's already achieved something? And you know the answer to that line. I mean, like, we never sort of escape that potential of being seen as violent and dangerous and fearsome. Sometimes I'm in my suit and I'll see a woman grab her purse a little tighter, and I'm like, I don't want anything in your purse. Right. Why are you grabbing your purse? And just wearing a suit doesn't then isolate it from, well, you know, it's still a black person, so that little twinge of nervousness. I mean, you know, after one of my book events, a woman came up to me and she said, I'm racist. Not me. She talked about herself. And she started talking about how
you were racist.
She had these. No. She was saying she herself is racist, and she has these thoughts that come into her mind, and she knows that they're wrong, but she still can't help thinking them. And that's part of what we're dealing with in this country.
What was your reply? I'm curious.
Well, I went into sociologist mode. I want to know fully, like, how does your mind work? Like, let's talk about this. I want to know, like, why you think that way and how you think, so I can understand the racist. You know, I felt like Jane Goodall, and finally I met a chimp who could talk English. Let's talk about you. Okay. And I mean, like, I want to understand, you know, how your mind works. And she just talked about receiving these ideas from the people older than her years ago, and they become reflexes and habits. And I think that we see that a lot in America, that there are these habits of ways of looking at us. And we, even in a world of Obama and Eric Holder, and, you know, Michelle Obama, these things aren't being broken.
All right, Torrey, thank you so much. I know you're very busy there in Massachusetts. I appreciate you making time for me. I'll see you soon.